it seems that there are a challenge with regard to the performance of boards. And some of you might know the answer by now, but Peter Drucker, who wrote extensively on the topic, especially on NGOs and managing NGO boards in various settings, also religious settings, welfare settings, or social impact settings. He said there's one thing all boards have in common, regardless of their legal position. Now, the question would be, what does all boards have in common, regardless of their legal position? Now, when I ask this question, and during presentations, I often get various responses like all have agendas or minutes or members, various things like that. But Peter Drucker has a different opinion. He suggests that what all boards have in common, regardless of their legal position, is they do not function. And having been part of many, many meetings myself, I think I have to agree with him that often the part of a board or a meeting that tends to be very, very frustrating, as it seems that we're going on in circles and circles. And hence, it seems to be very important that one has a proper understanding of how meetings are supposed to function and what we hope to achieve at these meetings. And so the aim of tonight's presentation is to look then at some guidelines from Ellen White, look at our General Conference Rules of Order, which we use for our meetings, and then discuss some of the mechanics of meetings. And then lastly, we hope to spend a few minutes just on looking at agendas and minutes and one or two other little things that might hopefully help in terms of our meetings. So with that in mind, let's continue then, and let's talk about to run church meetings, how that could assist us. So we use the General Conference Rules of Order, which has been printed in 2015, a set of rules to help us navigate our various meetings at different levels, local church level, conference level, conference sessions, union level, division level, and even the General Conference used these procedural rules for meetings of the church. And before this was compiled, we also made use of Robert's Rules when there was a dispute. Many of you might know Robert's Rules. It's a very complicated, it's also quite a comprehensive set of rules. But compared to Robert's Rules, the General Conference Rules of Order, which we are following, are only a few pages. It's about 15, 16 pages that we use to regulate our meeting. We will not have time to study the whole document tonight, but we will look at one or two highlights as we continue with the presentation. Also quoted from there, and one or two other quotations from Ellen White would be the following. Ellen White says, or Ellen White asks for harmony and simplicity in business meetings, or the business meetings of the church, and recommends the avoidance of unnecessary machinery which could sap the physical and mental energies of those called to participate in councils and committee meetings. And if you've attended some of the meetings, some church group meetings, even business meetings, even at session level, sometimes we tend to find that there's a lot of machinery or strategies used, often to derail or to delay the proceedings that's happening. Ellen White counsels against that. She continues to say that if your committee meetings and council meetings are not under the direct supervision of the Spirit of God, your conclusions will be earthborn and worthy of no more consideration than are any man's expressions. And this is a powerful statement, and maybe even at board level, we should reflect and meditate on these two quotations and see how, if we apply these principles, it could change not only the atmosphere, but the impact and the reach of the meetings that we are in. Then in Gospel Workers, there's a chapter, a few paragraphs devoted to business meetings. We will not have time to read all of that, but I will recommend that you go and have a look at that and see what she's writing there, what she's recommending, as these principles are vital and crucial for our in terms of, again, the attitude, again, having efficient meetings and making progress so that we can enhance the work of the Lord, the one who called us to do this very, very work. So let's then delve into meetings itself. And I think if you forget many things that I say tonight, if you only remember planning, you've probably done well. And we would like to emphasize that planning is very, very, very important. Too often we attend meetings, and the meetings are not enabled, they are not ready to take actions because they lack information or they lack documentation. And so planning is crucial for effective meeting management. And so a formal meeting like a church board is a forum where actions are taken. It's not a think tank, so we don't attend a meeting and then start thinking creatively about challenges and problems. That normally happens at subcommittee level. That normally we do is we think and reflect about motions or actions that we hope the church board will take. It's also not a social gathering. Sometimes we forget why we're there, and sometimes we even have tea and many other things as well. But we lose sight of why we're there and what we're supposed to achieve. And so to plan for the meeting and to come prepared so that actions can be taken. Sometimes in the absence of a proper agenda, the previous minutes are used as the new meeting agenda or the agenda for the evening. And then we rediscuss things that we've discussed the previous meeting. And then we take the opposite decision on actions that we've already decided on and that we've already voted on. So it seems that we are going into circles, and it's not very. So planning is very, very important for effective and efficient meeting management. So let's discuss the participants. We'll spend some time discussing who involved with meetings. So firstly, you've got the officers, and then you've got members. And in the church, we have at all levels the president, the president of a conference, president of the union, president of the division, president of the general conference. And so also our different layers also have these three offices. Sometimes we call him president, sometimes chairperson. Then we have the secretariat, the executive secretary as another officer. And at local level, we might refer to that individual as the church clerk, and then the CFO, the chief financial officer, or the treasurer at the various levels, and then the board members. So the chairperson, part of the officer, managing meetings, is supposed to be a neutral facilitator. And especially at local church level, we tend to find that does not always happen. And so I think the best analogy to use is to just talk about the soccer match for a few minutes. And, if you can imagine that a referee would start participating and score a goal for one of the two teams on the field, I know it's quite a stretch. And if a referee would score for one of the two teams, I'm sure he would not leave the field walking off. He might be very lucky if he can leave the field alive. The referee is not supposed to start participating in the game. The referee is supposed to ensure that there's a safe environment where the game can be played. The referee must also ensure that both teams abide by the rules so that they can have um, um, equal opportunity at scoring. They can have equal opportunity at sportsmanship, that there's no danger, dangerous play. That's the role of the referee. But the moment that the referee start participating in the game, start kicking the ball, um, even if he doesn't score, people from the opposing team that will immediately object and say that's unfair. And that is the same thing that happens when a chairperson starts participating in the meeting in terms of the discussion. Because you also have two teams. We'll talk about them a little bit later. In a meeting, you have the friends of emotion and the enemies of emotion. Again, that's terminology used by Roberts in his rules. But you could also say it is the people that would be for the motion or in favor of the motion and those against the motion. And so if the chairperson sides with any one of the groups and there's the perception that the chairperson is playing for the other team, there will be unhappiness and people will call that unfair. And it would be unfair. The chairperson is supposed to make sure that the playfield is even, that the playfield is safe, and that the playfield is of such nature that it can enhance the game, or the game can continue without any obstacles or hindrances. And that is what the chairperson does when he chairs a meeting. If a chairperson feels very strong about a motion under discussion and he wants to participate, in other words, speak for or against the motion, then the chairperson should recuse himself from chairing that particular section of the meeting, and another chairperson should be appointed so that the neutrality of the meeting can be guaranteed, and that we can continue in that fashion. So then we've talked about the secretary, the church clerk, the executive secretary at conference and union and division levels. They record the proceedings, take the minutes, and they inform relevant people about the actions taken. That is unless the meeting specifically mandates somebody to communicate with somebody with regards to an action. But if not, then that is the work of the secretary. And by the way, only the secretary. We don't all communicate on behalf of the meeting. It would be the chairperson and the secretary that would communicate. We'll talk later about confidentiality if there's time at the end of our presentation. But often we experience some challenges when people talk out of committees or do not keep the confidentiality and share information that has been discussed at a meeting. Sometimes out of context, sometimes their perception of what happened, and sometimes it takes a lot of time and pain to undo the damage if confidential information has been shared. Then the treasurer is the next person dealing with the finances, preparing the financial statements, and that implement the budget voted by the business meeting. And if there are changes or mandates from the church board, treasurer will typically implement those actions. And then you've got the members. And when we talk about members participating in a board meeting, firstly, their behavior is very important, and also their attitude. Because if we lose ourselves and we don't meet as the faithful disciples of Jesus, sometimes the temperatures can go up. Sometimes we say things that we regret. Sometimes we act in a way that even embarrass the cross. And therefore, it is important that we consider our behavior and our attitude as members of a meeting. And then members also have a privilege of one contribution per motion. Often When you think back of meetings, you'll think of this one or two individuals that keep on dialoguing with the chairperson, or has a comment after every single comment or contribution that has been made by another member, and that is not allowed in terms of the rules of order. A person has a privilege of contributing per motion, and you know, if what you want to say has already been said by another member, I mean, why say it again? You know, and as I indicated, you can't engage in a dialogue with the chairperson. So, listen carefully, make notes as to what you want to say, or in terms of the question you want to ask, or in terms of the concern you want to raise. And when the chair recognizes your hand, make that contribution. And although every member's contribution is important, um, it does not allow us to keep on hijacking meetings and taking over meetings as members of a particular meeting. Let us talk about the quorum. Most of you would know the quorum, and a quorum is simply the minimum number of people required to constitute a legal meeting. So if you have less people than a quorum present, especially at a church board or business meeting, then you cannot continue to constitute a legal meeting, or you can't continue with the business of that meeting. You can take no actions. And sometimes there's confusion when people attend the sessions of the conference, and at the conference session, the president will declare the session open once it is determined that there are more than a quorum present. And thereafter, according to the constitution of the Cape Conference, and that's according to the model constitution, whoever then thereafter remains in the hall when they do business will constitute a quorum. And the meeting remains open till the president closes or adjourns the meeting. And then it's the end of the session. But that is allowed because the bylaws specify that, and the constitution specifies that. Now for all other meetings, for business meetings, for church boards, a quorum is required. And if you do not have a quorum, you cannot continue with business. And I also see sometimes that people would count those that attended the apology as part of the quorum. No, that would not quite be correct. The quorum is only the minimum number of people present at the time when the meeting convenes. So if you've attended an apology, then you're not there, and you would not be counted as part of the quorum. And so we use a mathematical formula. So the quorum is calculated by dividing the number of members by 2, and you add 1 to the answer. Like if there's 21 members, you divide it by 2, and you will get 10 and a half. And you add 1 to the answer, and so you will have 11 and a half. But then again, you can't work with a half, because we don't have half a person. It's only me that's 1.5 people. But normally we only represent one person. And therefore, if your answer is even like 11 and a half, or if there's a fraction, then you round it up to the next one. And therefore, if your membership is 21, your quorum will be 12. And if you're less than 12, then you would not constitute as a quorum, and you cannot do business on behalf of that meeting. Also, we do not allow, or proxy is not allowed according to our rules of order and according to our policies. Members must be present in person to participate and to vote. Now, it is true that there are meetings and there are circumstances where proxy is allowed, but not in the church. You have to be there in person, and you have to speak yourself, and you have to vote for yourself. Otherwise, your voice will not be heard and your vote will not be recognized. And I think the reason for that, when we ask why would certain meetings allow that, I think is because as a church, we strongly believe that when we meet under the influence and guidance of the Holy Spirit. And I remember often going to a meeting, going through the agenda, and then I think for this specific item, my position is for or against the action. Let's say for the action. And once we're at the meeting and there's some discussion and learn more knowledge, and as we pray together and as we uh, meet under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, often I've changed my position that I came with to the meeting. And I believe that's part of what the Holy Spirit does. And so if you send somebody else with your voice, in other words, with a specific mandate to speak in a specific direction, then you lose the context of the conversation. And we could also run in danger that might be under many other guidance, but not necessarily the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And so proxy is not allowed when we meet, for none of our meetings at all levels of the church. Let's talk a little bit about voting. And when we speak about voting, we touched on the proxy, that members have to be present. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to vote, or your vote will not be considered. And when we count the voting, you have a simple majority, you have a majority, and you have a two-third majority. And so when you have a simple majority, it really means that more people are in favor of the motion than people against the motion. So again, let's take our example of 21 people. So let's say on our church board of 21 members, when a question has been called on the motion and we're ready to vote, and let's say 7 people vote for the motion and 2 people vote against. In other words, out of the 21, only 8 people participated in voting. Will that motion be lost or carried? Now, when you take the simple majority rule, which means that more people must be in favor of the action than against, then the motion will carry because it meets that requirement. And that is the measure that we use for most actions that we take at the church board level or business meeting level. The majority means that if you use the majority rule, and by the way, last night when we discussed the church manual, you'll remember when we discussed voting, discipline, censure, or disfellowship, it said majority vote. So that means that at least a quorum must support the motion. In other words, more than half the people there must be in favor of the motion. So you would like to have at least the 12 people in favor of that motion, because it's such an important action. If only 2 or 3 people vote for it and others abstain for whatever reason, it's not necessary that you have the voice or the vote of all present. And so for certain important actions, they require a higher standard, like the majority. So at least 12 in the example that I used. And then when we want to change the constitution of the conference, for instance, or many meetings, when you want to remove somebody's rights, in other words, another example is when you call question, the technical thing to do is first make sure that at least 2/3 of the meeting are in agreement, because you remove somebody's rights, the right to speak and to participate in the discussion. Or if you want to change the constitution, then you need a 2/3 vote for that particular action. But those are rare examples. So we don't see that normally at local church level or even at business meeting. You might encounter when the church considers discipline, the majority vote. Otherwise, it's just a simple majority. And if more people favor, then those against the motion will carry. On the other hand, if more people are against the motion than those in favor of the motion is lost. So let's consider the matter of a tie. I'll go to the next slide for that. And so when we deal with the tie, and this is where I had to confess at the beginning, I didn't quite responded appropriately to it at the previous presentation. But we've consulted with the General Conference Rules of Order, and it's following about a tie. It says on the main question or motion, in case of a tie vote, the motion is lost. This provision respects the right of the chair if the chair has not already voted to do so in order to make or to break a tie vote. So it says if there's a tie and the chairperson did not already vote, if you already participated in the voting up to then he cannot break the tie because you already voted. But if he has not yet voted, then he can break the tie. And then the motion will be lost or not. So if there's a tie, the chairperson did not exercise his right to vote, then the motion is merely lost, as if it never happened. If, however, the chairperson decides to have the casting vote, then the motion will carry because it will be one more in favor of the motion. But I chaired many meetings in the few years that I've been ministering this far, and I don't vote as a chairperson, and I will never vote to break the tie. And the simple reason for that is, even though I am fully authorized to do that, is that, remember, if you have a tie, and let's say you've got a church business meeting of 100 people present, and they're 50-50. So if you're going to break the tie as chairperson, immediately you're going to make 50 people angry with you. So it seems there are other ways to deal with that, to either ask for more information, for more time, so that the House can give the chair a clear indication of their wish with regard to a specific motion. But it seems that it could be dangerous and might ruin a few relationships if you use the casting vote. But when there's a tie, the chairperson can break that tie if he did not vote already. But until such action, as long as there's a tie, the motion is lost, and that just means it is as if it was not presented to the House, as other motions which does not carry, and then the motion is also lost. It will be the same effect. So that's with respect to or reference to a tie. So let's talk a little bit about the parliamentary process and some of the elements of that. And so normally meeting starts with agendas. We've discussed the quorum, but if there's not a quorum, we cannot continue with the meeting. Some of the bylaws makes provision for what to do if there's not a quorum, but if there's not a quorum, we pray and we go home, and we cannot meet until we are a quorum, or we phone other members to join us until we are a quorum, and then we can start with the business. Then we also need to deal with the previous minutes. Need to be accepted. And when we talk about agendas and quorum and previous minutes, best practice with regard to this would be the following. Previous minutes are not an agenda. We've discussed it earlier, and it is one of the signs that the officers and the leaders did not prepare amply for the meeting, is if there's not a proper agenda. And if you do that, you're going to rediscuss matters that you've already discussed, and often take the opposite decision, which would not be allowed by the rules, because you cannot take a counter motion. You can rescind the motion if there are new information or if there's a good reason for that. But you can't simply, when we voted to pay Pastor Eugene 50 Rand for his birthday, vote not to pay Pastor Eugene because that's a counter motion. If there are other information, like we discovered it's not his birthday, then we can rescind that motion, but then it's not regarded as a counter motion. Um, One of the things that I've been doing for many years is to have the items in motion form. And I'll show you when we look at the actual agendas and the meetings a little bit later towards the end of this presentation. Most people make use of what I call a grocery list for the agenda items. So they will just put church roof or microphone or data projector or whatever the item might be. But it's very difficult to prepare for items like, and especially when it's financial items. And so often, a person is very excited that we need a new whatever, let's say a data projector because there's something wrong with the previous one. And the person likes to move boldly that we purchase a new data projector. And so normally everybody is excited except the treasurer, and the treasurer will first ask, and how much will it cost? And then the person says, no, I don't know. I haven't checked that yet, but I just know we need a new one. And so they might discuss the pros and the cons, and even the brand that they want to buy. But in the end, they're going to table that item because the treasurer is going to bring 3 quotations, and then we will discuss the item. Now that's also a sign of poor planning. So if you know you want the church board to take an action on a financial matter, well, just go and get 3 quotations and attach it to your motion, and then the treasurer would know. Also, a discussion with the leadership might help, that one can determine, which would be the best funds to take this particular item from. Will it come from maintenance? Is it insurance claim? Is it evangelism? From which funds? And so if all of that information is gathered before the time and collected and formulated into the motion, I can assure you, if you move that motion, it will most probably carry, if it makes sense, to the board members. But if you lack information, when you work from a grocery list for agenda, you will probably table most of the items and get back to them, only to attend the next meeting and realize they haven't sent the minutes out because they just sent them to you by WhatsApp on your way to church board, and then you remember, oh, I never got the quotations that I was supposed to get. And then it's going to be postponed for another 4 weeks. And so we continue. And I guess that's probably why Peter Drucker says that the common element is that we don't function as effective and efficient as we're supposed to. Then when I chair meetings, I do not have an item called general. I see many chairpersons have an item called general. I'm still looking for the general. I don't know where we will find the general, but very often after a long church board meeting or a business meeting, late at night, after a long day of all sorts of things, then somebody will sneak something in under the item general. Often it leads to conflict. Often it leads to tension, especially because it's late in the day. We're not prepared for that motion necessarily. And so if I did not accept or receive the agenda items ahead of time to enable me to prepare, and what do I mean with prepare? Make sure that I've got all the information necessary to take the action, that I prayerfully consider the items. Some of the items I need to discuss with my supervisor. If I'm a church pastor, I would like to discuss it with the executive secretary or the president. Maybe I'd like to consult with a senior colleague, and for that I need time. But if you just drop an item on the spur of the moment, our response will be knee-jerk, and often we regret a knee-jerk reaction, especially in a meeting session. And so if you have poor quality information, you will probably take poor quality decisions. So we go back to being prepared. If we come prepared, we have quality information, we have all the detail people need, we enable people to take a decision, people take good quality decisions. So I do not use the previous minutes as an agenda. I formulate the agenda into motion form, not grocery list, and I do not accept uh, journal items that has not been on the agenda. We can always call a special meeting to attend to that matter, but not before we had the opportunity to prepare for an item. Um, it's dangerous to ambush the meeting or the chairperson, and it could be to the detriment of not only the board but also the church at large. Then, if we continue with the parliamentary process, when we deal with motions, and I'll show you a little graphic a little bit later when we continue. When there's a motion made by one of the members, or it's been pre-printed on the agenda, the chairperson will read the motion, and I will emphasize read the motion, so that everybody is on the same page with regards to the motion. So often we discuss and somebody moves, and then an hour and a half later we're still discussing, and then somebody calls question, and then we vote. And inevitably some people are going to ask, but what are we voting on? And then we're not quite sure what the motion is at that stage. And especially if somebody says, I would like to move or make a suggestion, and then the chairperson asks, is there a motion? And then somebody says, I so move. Yeah, so we can remember the I so move, but what did we so move? You know, we need to be exactly sure, and the wording becomes very, very important. With regard to disciplinary actions, with regard to maintenance matters, with regard to, if we're not clear about the motions. Let me give you an example about maintenance. There was a church not very far from where I am, and they didn't do proper maintenance, and it was not reflected in their minutes. And there was a huff and a puff and a wind, and the wall fell over. And the insurance company, one of the things they did is they looked at the minutes. And the minutes didn't reflect that specific congregation, not an Adventist congregation, did proper maintenance. The budget didn't reflect it, and they repudiated the claim. So when there's a dispute at different forums, they will look at the minutes. And if the minutes are not accurately reflecting what we voted, what we've written down and accepted as the minutes, that's going to be the final word on it. And so we need to be careful. And unfortunately, today we live in a time where members challenges our decisions. So when a member is disciplined, we are aware that some of them have challenged that in a court and litigated against the church. And so then they will look at your minutes, that you take the appropriate actions according to the direction in the church board, that you follow the notice periods, that you discipline the person for a reason that you are allowed to do that you overreach, etc., etc. So therefore, it's important that the motion rather be written down and or flighted on an overhead projector, so that we all or data projector, that we're all sure this is the motion, this is what we're dealing with. And especially if it's a longer and a more complicated motion, it helps. Otherwise, members tend to get lost with the motion. So once the motion is read and we all know this is the motion, the chairperson will ask for a second. A second means that somebody will raise their hand, and once that happened, it means that the House agrees to discuss the motion. If there's no second, it means the House does not have the appetite or is not willing to discuss the matter. Sometimes you have very controversial matters. I remember a particular instance where the matter of women's ordination, not necessarily women's ordination, but the appointment of a lady elder had to be discussed. One of my colleagues was a ministerial intern, and the recommendation by church manual and church policies for her to be voted as an elder so that she can perform the various functions. And so in the various churches I served, we tabled the matter at the boards, and at some it was discussed, some it was accepted, others not, and that's not the point. And one particular congregation, when I read the motion, asked for a second, they were all staring at me. And it was clear that they don't even want to the motion. They don't want to discuss it. And what I then did is to say, well, let's go to the next item because it's clear that they don't want to discuss it. And that's the reason for the second, is to make sure that the House has the appetite and is willing to discuss or consider the motion that has been made. If there's no second, there's no discussion. On the other hand, we sometimes see that people call a point of order. If you attend Parliament and our sessions, then you will be very familiar with the term on a point of order. So sometimes we have a long, lengthy discussion on a matter, and then the politicians and the machinery and the agendas comes to the front, and a person realizes, and then he raises on a point of order and say, Mr. Chair, there was no second for the motion. Well, that would not be appropriate point of order because the meeting, by participating in the discussion for the last hour, indicated their willingness to consider and discuss the matter. So at that late hour, in that particular instance, it wouldn't really matter. So it's normally at the very beginning when a motion is made, and if several speakers, most of the speakers already contributed, it's a fruitless item to raise it on the item of question at that stage. Then, when the second is called and we're all sure we want to discuss it, then we need to discuss the actual item. The friends and the enemies of the motion. In other words, those for and those against. And the chairperson is supposed to take one from each side. That's why at sessions they've got a for or against microphone. Even at Parliament, you speak for or against the motion. So normally when the chair recognizes you, you're supposed to say, Mr. Chair, I speak for or I speak against the motion, and then you give your reasons for that. And the chair is supposed to recognize one for, then one against the motion, and one for and one against the motion, as to give equal opportunity in terms of the discussion. Now, in smaller meetings, we don't always do that, and we just recognize the speakers in the order. And normally, because our meetings are smaller, everybody do get an opportunity to address the House if they so wish. And especially if we don't allow one or two people to dominate the discussion or to debate with the chair the whole time or engage with every presenter. And what I also tend to do when I facilitate the discussion, sometimes you know those who are very vocal and will comment on everything, but then there's also those members who are very, very quiet and they don't say anything. And so I would deliberately ask a person, what do you think? What is your opinion on the matter? Because that's why we are a board. We would like to hear everybody's voice and then take a decision based on discussion and our understanding of the situation. So after the discussion, we put the motion to the vote when question has been called. And question is normally called then on the main motion. It just means that we're ready to vote. We don't need more information. We don't need more discussion. We just need to vote, and then we live with the outcome of the vote. And so, motion is, when we discuss motions, the issue is decided at formal process where a group of people gather is called an action or a resolution. And some technical things, but once it is the issue is formulated into an action or resolution, it is called a motion. I think on one of the slides that I fixed, not this particular one, it is actually, once it's seconded, technically it's called a motion, and from there we deal with it as a motion. And so you can accept it verbally from the floor, or you can accept a motion on the agenda. Sometimes they also request or require a second for motions to be formulated that way, but we don't normally do that. If we receive a motion, we normally accept a motion, and if the House doesn't indicate a second at the time of reading and introduction. It's at that time that we determine whether there's a second or not. And then a formal meeting process motions by. So even if you have a formulated or articulated motion on an item before the time, it doesn't mean that it will necessarily go in that direction, because the meeting can vote it up, they can vote it down, or they can vote an amended version of the motion. And so an amendment means you change some of the elements. So if you go back to our example that we suggested a motion to pay Pastor Eugene 50 Rand for a birthday gift, and there's a second, and then somebody says they would like to amend the motion, and then say, no, 50 Rand. What can you do with 50 Rand? So you'd like to move an amendment that we change the 50 Rand to 5,000 Rand. So what happens then is the chairperson must ask for a second. Is there a second for the amendment from 50 to 5,000? If there's a second, then we discuss it. If there's no second, then it falls away and we continue with the main motion. Then people will discuss whether they're in favor of the 5,000 or not. And whether they're in favor of the 5,000 or not doesn't matter, because we still need to get back to the main motion. And often people don't participate in amendments because they're already against the main principle. So they would just agree with the amendment and then vote against the main motion if that's their desire. But what you need to do is you first need to deal with the amendment, vote the amendment up or down. Once the amendment is voted in, then you go back to the new main motion. If the amendment carried, in our example, we would like to give Pastor Eugene a birthday gift of 5,000 Rand. And if we call question now, that will be the new main motion that we vote on. So if people have many other issues, they'll vote against that main motion. Or if people are in favor, they will vote for it. And then it will carry as the amended motion. And that's what it means. If you make an amendment, you also need to be careful that you don't introduce a counter motion. So when I say, Mr. Chair, I would like to amend the motion, I can't say I would like to amend the motion that we do not give Pastor Eugene a birthday gift, because that will go against the motion and the spirit of the motion. It will change the original motion, and that would be against procedure of meetings. I can only change elements that will not change the meaning or the intention of the motion. So the intention of the motion was to give him a gift. Now we can discuss whether it's for his birthday or whether it's for any other special day, or whether we just want to appreciate him. We can amend that, or we can amend the amount. Or those would be elements that you can amend, but you cannot amend the motion and change the meaning of the original or the intention of the original motion. That will be called a counter motion, and that's not allowed by the rules. So that's with regard to motions, voting them up or down. And so because we discuss preparation and preparing for meetings, I also prepare what I call a meeting pack. And in the meeting pack, I have an attendance register. I'll shortly show you some examples of these items. Motion forms, ballot papers. I tend to find that people want to vote at board meetings or business meetings, and then they tear up their Sabbath school quarterlies because they didn't bring ballot papers with them. So I have pre-cut ballot papers that I put in a container and take with me. If there's need, we can just vote and take it from there. It also then streamlines the process. We don't waste time, and we can immediately start with the voting process and count them. Then you need to have the previous minutes ready and printed out as part of your meeting pack, and the agenda that you would follow for that particular meeting, and then all other relevant documentation, correspondence, quotations, whatever you need. for the meeting to take decisions. All of that needs to be part of your meeting pack. And if the various members need that information, it must be circulated to them well before the meeting. In other words, come prepared so that we are ready to take action, that we are ready to discuss the matters, and that we can implement or vote against them, depending on the situation. So I've discussed the ballot papers. I'm not going to say too much about them at this stage. Sometimes I would print them in a specific color, or I would print them with the logo of the church on, just depending on the situation, to ensure the integrity of the process and that we know. I also count the ballots that I hand out. I've discovered that some church board meetings or business meetings that sometimes we have more ballot papers returned than people present at the meeting. One would have hoped it doesn't happen at church meetings, but it sometimes happens. So one needs to also protect the integrity of the process. And speaking about that, maybe I can just add, when we vote, I've already mentioned, I never vote. As chairperson, I never participate in the voting. When the ballot papers are handed out, I don't handle them. I don't collect the ballot papers. And I normally ask the meeting, because we don't always use ballot papers, but I ask the meeting to appoint 2 people to count the votes. So then I will stand at the opposite side. I will wait for them to count the ballots and to indicate to me what the outcome of the vote is. And only then will I announce it. I don't touch the ballot papers. I don't count them. I don't participate in that. And the reason for that is I've been accused in the past that we manipulate the outcome of that. And so one realized that sometimes people have strange ideas, and so it's important for the integrity of the process to remove all perception of evil and so forth. So let's discuss the agenda, and then we can talk about the minutes in one of the next slides. And so this is normally an agenda that I prepare for church board meetings. This is a standard template that I'm using. I know it's very small on the screen, but I will blow it up now that you can see. So on the top part, I normally have a drop-down list that they can choose the church, and they can choose the meeting. So if I have a district of 10 or 11 churches, or 5 or 4, depending on the case, then I will list the church down on the drop-down list, and the church clerk can just click on it, and the name of the church will appear. And then here I've listed the various meetings. Is it a business meeting? Is it a church board? Is it a Sabbath school council? Whatever the case might be. And so it's easier to do it from there. Then I've got a drop-down list for the date, and you can just select the date, and the date is there, and the time of the meeting. And again, for the venue of the meeting, the same. I indicate the actual or the proposed start time, and when we hope to finish, and how long the meeting would be. And for those with OCD that would like to report the actual starting time and the actual ending time and the actual length, they could record it there. And then preliminary, we do the welcome, we do the apologies if there are any, and because of Poppy, I had to change the slide a little bit, but normally we'd have all the members' names in here. So we would have a name, surname, all the members are listed here. And so what I do in the meeting is, let's say all those present, I will circle it with a green pen. If you're absent, I will use a red pen, for instance. And if you apologize, I will use a blue pen, whatever the case might be. Then it's easy to just see who were present, whether we do have a quorum. And I also indicate the formula for the quorum on my agenda, and also the actual number of the quorum. And again, the reason why I do that, or did that, is because if you have 5, 6 churches, I can't remember the quorum for all the churches and for all the different meetings. And it's easier for myself when I chair. When it's up there, it also helps the meeting, and there's never a question, and we can always ensure that we are a quorum. After we've done that, we can start with the devotion. Then normally we do our devotion. and from then we can move on. One of the items that I have standard as well is the responsibility of the church board. And for those of you who attended the session at Good Hope, we still make use of the 15th or the 19th edition of the church board that was revised in 2015. But this is the responsibilities of the church board. And I think it's important that the church board knows what they are responsible for. Maybe some of these items might shock or surprise you. Yeah, the church boards are responsible to develop and implement a discipleship plan, whatever that means. The church boards are responsible to study the membership list and initiate plans for reconnecting, reclaiming members. They are responsible for training local leadership in how to encourage intentional spiritual growth. So not just leadership training, but very particular with intentional spiritual growth. Then evangelize the outreach or the missionary territory of the church. There should be an active plan of that. And if you attended the UCI or the Urban Centre Influence presentation, or the Global Pioneer Mission presentation, we talked about mapping the territory, but evangelize the efforts in the total territory of the church, whatever that is. Coordinate the outreach programs for all church departments, although each department develop its plans for outreach within its sphere. So typically your Sabbath school council or Sabbath school department will develop their plans, and then those plans are then recommended to the church board, and at the church board we coordinate. You see, it didn't say develop or vote or take control. It just coordinate all the plans so that we see are there clashes. We don't all want to do a visitors' day on the same day, or we want to have a fast and prayer focus from personal ministries, and another department wants to do from, say, women's ministries, invite a friend, and they prepare the lunch. So obviously that wouldn't go down too well. So that's why we need to coordinate, and the church board coordinates. Encourage the personal ministries department to enlist all members and children in some form of personal outreach or missionary service. Encourage the interest coordinator to ensure that every interest is personally and promptly followed up by assigned laypersons. Number 8, encourage each department to report at least quarterly to the board and to the members. Now, I didn't copy the whole paragraph in, but it continues on this session. It includes, or say, when you report to the board, to the members, it's normally to the business meeting. And it gives some examples there. And then receive regular reports, financial reports, membership list reports, outreach reports. Whatever reports can help the church to better strategize and to do their function. And then there's one that they added. There used to be 9, but they've added the 10th one. And I don't know how many boards are actually aware of this, to promote Adventist education. So go and check on page 137, 138 of the church manual, and you will find on those 2 pages a discussion on these items, not just a list. But I think it's important that the church board are made aware of what are they supposed to do, and why are they there, and are we actually accomplishing our mission. And so I put it up in the agenda so that it's up there, and we can have the tick box, and we can tick the items as we attend to some of these items. And then, as I said, in motion form, you will see we normally have, I've started breaking down the name of the church by using only the consonants, and then I would put CB for church board, or PM for business meeting, or SS for Sabbath school council. We normally take the year, and then you start on the first page of the agenda and the first page of the minute. You start with item number 1. And then you're going to run all the way. Your next minute is going to, let's say we ended with item 3, then we're going to start a new agenda the new minutes with item number 4. And if we end on page number 3, the new ones will start on number 4. And so you run normally for the whole year. And then at the new year, with the new year date, then you will start at 1 again. And so you will continue. So I've just listed, if there are correspondence, then we can deal with that, or matters arising, or financial report, whatever other reports we need to discuss. And it helps to have these reports in writing. It focuses the discussion, it's meaningful, and it helps to analyze and to strategize from a written document than just a verbal report. Then if we need to deal with transfers, you recommend them to the business meeting. But I want you to see that we actually have the items in motion form. You understand what the motion is. So whereas whatever the reason would be, I think this one with the baptismal reports might be important. So whereas we sometimes lose record of the candidates baptized, move that the prescribed baptismal report form, that's the one prescribed by the conference, be completed and attached to the minutes of the board that vote for the baptism, so that we can ensure an accurate statistical report. But you can see it's not just a grocery list that said baptismal report forms. It's formulated in a motion. When it's formulated in a motion, it focuses the discussion. We're all on the same page. We know what the discussion is all about. We can say whether we for or against it. We can contribute to the discussion, and then we can vote it up or down. You can save a lot of time when you have a focused and a planned discussion. And then it's just then wrapping it up. And so I normally, this one is for PLC. I've copied and pasted from different ones. And you can see the heading doesn't correspond with the actual action here. But I normally indicate the date of the next meeting. I've started adjusting that, and I started having the date when agenda items must be received. That's normally, let's say, 3 weeks before the church board or the meeting. Then the time that the agendas must go out, and the minutes must go out, all the items, and then a week later would be the actual board meeting. So that gives you time to collect the information. It gives you time to prepare the items. It gives you time to send out, and different members can actually look at their agendas and prepare prayerfully and prepare for the discussion. And we're not surprised and ambushed when we get there. So I've changed this into 3 dates with regards to one meeting. When the deadline for agenda submissions, the deadline when the agenda and the minutes must be sent to board members, and then the actual board date. I tend to have the whole list for the year, so that people know when the board will take place, and we're not surprised, and we tend to have better quorums if we do it that way. Talked about the attendance register. For the church board, I mainly use the one that I
Okay, so it seems that Pastor Potgieter is frozen. Just bear with us. He normally does come.
When tabling a motion. Now, it says, please write your motion before you table it during the meeting, and remember to give the necessary background along with who must take the action, what the action is to accomplish, how much will it cost, from what funds will it be paid, when must it be acted on or completed, or how will the board know that the action has been completed. And then there's an example of an motion. So you can see that the person who moved it, his name is there, and signed, seconded, and the person signs and then they will write down the subject and what they move. And so when they hand this to me, then I can read the motion and it's clear. So sometimes a person moves and then I repeat the motion, and then the person says, no, that's not what I said. And then I try and repeat it again, what the person repeated. And then no, again, I missed the point. And so it takes sometimes a long discussion to get to the actual motion. So I insist on a motion being written down. And so I'll even give the person, you'll save more time by allowing the person to just write down the motion, and we're all on the same page as far as that is concerned. It also helps when you vote for the acceptance of your minutes. People remember strangely and strange things. So if there's a dispute, I take out these documents and say, well, this is the motion that you've moved, and we've captured it exactly as you've moved it and as we discussed it and as we voted it. And so it takes a few seconds to accept your previous minutes. The other motions are already in motion form, so they're on the agenda, so there's no dispute with regards to those motions. And then from there, the minutes, you will see, looks exactly the same, other than it has those who are present, the name of the church, the type of meeting, the date, the place, and where it took place. The name of those present, we normally start with the surname, then the first name. We do it alphabetically. You could put behind the chairperson's name in brackets, chairperson, secretary, or you could start with the chairperson, the secretary, and the treasurer, and just continue with the other names alphabetically. Then you report if there are any apologies received. And normally apologies what we receive in writing. It's also our custom, if a person misses 3 meetings without an apology in a row, that we could reconsider the membership. That's a different discussion. We struggle to get quorums. And again, if there's no apology and a person is just absent, then it's recorded as absent. So if there are 3 absences without apology, that will constitute maybe worth responding to that. And then the motions that we've already captured on the agenda that we've discussed, let's just copy it and paste into the agenda, and now we correct them. So that if they were lost, we just don't copy them over. If they were amended, then we bring on the amendments and we record it as such. Now on the minutes, on the agenda, it will say move to. But once you have them as the minutes, then it will be voted, because now you've voted on that particular item. And that's the main difference. So then I changed all the moves to voted. And within a few seconds after the meeting, we're done with the minutes. Now you can see here, I copied the corrected one. So the discussion and then voted to. You remember the one on the baptismal forms? We moved that, and now it's recorded in the minute as we did that. And that's how we do the agendas and the minutes. We're almost done. We must see with the time, Pastor, you must let me know. But I think we'll probably skip the section on complications of meetings. Let's just do a summary on the procedure of the meeting. So the motion is introduced by a board member. Then the motion is seconded. The chairperson asks for a second, which means there's support for the discussion. Without a second, as we've seen previously, you can't continue with that motion. It's lost. Then we debate the various aspects for or against. It's not persuasion or coercing or forcing people. We've already indicated we're led by God's Spirit. And so we share information, we share our views, and in the end, when we finish doing that, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, we vote on that. We vote the motion in, or we vote the motion down. So when we finish with the discussion, somebody can call question, one of the members, and that means that we finished with the discussion, or we want to cease discussion. We don't need any more information. We're ready to vote. We've discussed the majority, the majority and the 2/3, and even the tie. So I'm not going to get into that more at this stage. And then the result, the motion can be lost if more people vote against than for the motion. It can be amended or accepted with amendment, or just plain accepted when more people vote for the motion than those against it. And that's just a summary of the process. Also, I think we'll call it a day here as far as this presentation